their property taxes would inevitably have to go up, or the service goes down, which means services in police, fire, roads, all of the sewer, parks, trails, all of the things that people love the area for, those services go down.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 Podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 435 Podcast. Today, we have Rusty Hughes. She's the Economic Development Director for Washington City. Just a couple weeks ago, we had the St. George City Economic Development Director on, and Rusty looks at it from a completely different lens. We talk all development in Washington City, traffic on Green Springs. We know y'all hate that. Enjoy this episode, guys. Hope you learned something. Shout out to our sponsors, our partners, Tech Ridge, Tuacahn Amphitheater, Real Estate 435, FS Coffee Company. You guys are awesome. Thanks for the support. And share this with your neighbor or your friend that lives in Washington City, because they're probably going to want to hear it. See you out there, guys. You know, this might sound crazy, but I hate real estate agents. And after being one myself for the last 10 years, I know the good ones from the bad ones. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate here in Southern Utah, we want you to interview us for the job. Go to realestate435.com and give us a call. We promise you're going to love us. Getting the topics isn't necessarily the challenge. It's like the who. Like who's the best person to talk about this thing? Because sometimes the politician's not the person. It's like economic development, right? You're the Economic Development Director for Washington City. Is that correct?
Right.
That's the title. Chad Thomas, he made sure it was Economic Development.
It's more development than economic.
Economic, right.
Yeah.
And so you've been in that position since 2021?
With Washington City.
With Washington City.
So I was previously at an EDO, which you know what that means now.
Economic
I forgot
Development
it already.
Oh, yeah, that's right. EDO, that's right.
Yeah,
okay.
So I was with a public-private partnership, a PPP, a 3P, it went through a lot of transition, but we had a director that started it for Washington County about 27 years ago, maybe more than that now. And he was at the helm of that for about 25 years. So he worked with, when I say he, when you work in economic development, you never work alone. There are so many partnerships and so many, you're kind of a jack of all trades. And so you have to really know the people and know who to contact and know where to get good data. But you never, no project is, I think you should be suspicious of anyone that says, I got this. I brought this in, because it's never one person. So, this doing
the job for 25 years though is one of those things like, wow. It seems like we don't have that very much anymore.
Well, yeah, and he actually the state interacted with him a lot on how they put together economic development for the state, and then we've been in another period of transition. So what he did worked really well for just to get industry and to diversify the local economy. Yeah. Meaning Washington County at the time where he did it, he was instrumental in bringing together the Fort Pierce Industrial Park, which is where most of that manufacturing came in and has come in. But there are a few other industrial parks in the area. There's Gateway Industrial in Hurricane. There's one out by there's Sunrise Valley in Washington, and then there's the largest industrial project in Washington County's history, which is wholly in Washington City.
Yeah, nice plug.
So
ARA, right?
Yeah, ARA Southwest Logistics.
Yeah, that's gonna be really huge for Southern Utah. I think a lot bigger than people really kind of realize.
I think people start to get an idea of it when those walls start going up. I mean, I get video from the developer usually once a month or so, just on the progress. And it's really a massive undertaking what they're doing out there.
That's big.
I didn't think that land would go for another 10, 15 years. And it really takes the largest industrial investor in the state of Utah to pull. I don't think there are a lot of people that could pull off what Freeport West is doing with ARA. Yeah. So it
seemed like for a long time it was like this. Somewhere in the future that we can't really foresee, this is a possibility out here, right? It seemed like, and then it went from that. It went from that to it's going to open in a year and a half. Like, oh crap! Wow.
They had a really aggressive build out schedule, and we need it because if you look at, I always look at the data too. our availability for industrial warehouse has been less than 1% for several quarters.
Yeah.
And before that, it was in the 2s, 3s.
And that's in
at
Washington
best.
City or in the county?
That's the county. And you look at it, you look at these things on a regional level, right? And then Washington City wasn't even really in the game until Sunrise Valley came in, which is a little bit smaller scale industrial park, but they have quite a bit of room to grow. And then with this ARA Southwest Logistics, they're really pioneering that area just east of the airport.
So I'm going to tie up the bow with the who, just because we just rolled right into it. And then
I got right to business.
Well, yeah, so did I, because I want to give a little bit of your past, because I didn't want the listeners to be like, oh, this is boring, click, and then they on to the next one. Because I want them to know who you are and why we're talking, right? We're talking about Washington City. We had the St. George City Economic Development Director, Chad Thomas, on a couple weeks ago.
Yep, he teed it up. He did great.
He teed it up. And really, as we go into another election season, everybody, don't be disappointed. We have more politics for you.
Is that what everybody's on here for?
I don't know.
They're going to be so disappointed. Don't get into the politics much.
I was more talking to the communities like, oh my gosh, another election. Do we ever stop with this? You know what I mean? Because we had such an intense one, but we had this last one was
for St. George.
Well, the presidential election was burdensome on everybody, national. I think. And so I think politics, whether it's federal or like local, they just blend it all together, I think.
I think so too. Yeah.
And then the local stuff, they're so burnt out by the presidential election that by the time that next one comes around, they're like, yeah, sure. If it's the guy that I know, I'm happy enough. Let's not rattle the boat
party,
too much.
or the
party.
Right.
City elections don't have parties, but to your point, like it's what's the path of least resistance? Excuse my cough. What's the path of least resistance? And so what I wanted to do is tee up before we have interviews for the mayors and the city council members is to understand, okay, who are the people on the ground doing the work year in and year out. There's the elected officials that drive policy making, but the people that are actually doing the work are individuals like you and Chad and, the administrative staff that help execute what these budgets entail. And then, the water department and the roads department. It's like, what does it really take to put all these things together? And how important is it, to the community?
Well, and I'm probably not the expert on it because I'm fairly new to municipal government. I've been in economic development for about a decade, and I previously worked for the public-private organization, and I work mostly with developers and with end users, and in the industrial and manufacturing space. So this is new to me too, and I had a completely different perspective of it. Being outside of it and never having attended a city council meeting, shame on me. I think everybody should, or at least watch them. I mean, that's how you engage in local government, and it really does make a difference. And our just the way that our government is structured, that leadership is important. And so engaging in those local elections, I think, is very important in getting to know your candidates because they're making decisions about where you live, and that really affects you more than some of these things that are happening on a federal level. Yeah,
one of the things too I was talking to Chad about just to that point is that there's the system that we have to operate in at the local level. It's like, well, we have to do it this way. I wish we could change that sales tax wasn't the primary generator of revenue. I wish that wasn't the incentive. But that is the only incentive, and it's the only way that we can provide these other things. And so I know you don't want us to put another hotel on Green Springs exit, but at the same time,
we do.
we need it for a different reason, right? We need that for a reason that can't just be about traffic, right? And it doesn't impact your lives, but in order for us to keep our roads and keep our police and keep the fire and keep the parks and make sure that property taxes stay low, we got to have some development, right? And designing where that development goes is very difficult because there's zoning, and then there's you're bringing basically businesses to the table. Maybe is that the best way to describe what your job is?
Kind of. Okay. Mine's a little bit different.
Okay.
Washington City is mostly a bedroom community.
Right.
However, and we've traditionally been farming, right? So the fields. Washington City is known for the Washington fields, which are now mostly homes.
We had farmer Sherry Staley on the podcast.
Yeah, and her family's been in Washington City for generations.
Exactly.
Right?
She's fifth generation. It's crazy.
Yeah. So when you say, are you a local or how long have you, I've lived in Washington. Well, I've lived in Southern Utah for 25 years and I've been in Washington City for let's see, I moved there in 2005. But that's where I've raised my children.
Yeah.
So I've been in Washington City for 20 years now.
Yeah. And so
but
you've watched the development of the fields.
I have. Well, I've always lived kind of downtown around the main core. So yeah, the fields my kids were raised at Staley Farms, going to Sherry's place, and we've got a lot of great pictures and a lot of great memories of that area. But I can't believe even just driving to the airport or just driving around town. I mean, a lot of what I do is look at things on maps, but when you're out there on the ground, it looks different, and you don't realize just how much development is going on.
Yeah.
So you see it in the permit numbers and the population increase and the new faces and all the cars on the road. But we've always lived in a unique area in that we have so many visitors that come to the area. So I think Chad touched on that it's the residents that live here, when you're new here, sometimes a lot of people came here because they ran the marathon, or they, like when we had the Kona Ironman that moved here.
World Senior Games. I've helped so many clients as a real estate agent. I've helped so many clients that are like, well, we were coming here and competing in the pistol shooting competition or whatever it might be. And we did that for 15 years and we just decided, this is where we want to be. Right. And probably two dozen. It was about 24 clients that are just from the World Senior Games, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of people see, they obviously see something different than what I saw 20 years ago when I moved here, because it's changed so much. But it is interesting. I find that the people that have lived there the longest have had to welcome, they've welcomed people. And they've been really good about it. And they've welcomed people into the community for a longer period of time. So they're used to that change, even though they still have nostalgia of how it used to be. And but they understand it will never be that way again.
Yeah.
So it will change. And so I think that's why you see a lot of engagement from people, because they realize it's going to change.
Yeah.
And we can either kick and scream and push against that, but change is inevitable, or we can be a part of it and we can be a part of shaping that.
Right.
And so that's kind of what really interested me about working in the city that I raised my children in, and that I've lived in for 20 years, and really I feel like I grew up in myself.
Yeah.
So Chad mentioned, he was talking about the dollar value of the deals he's done and things like that, which is economic development speak for, I know what I'm doing, and, and I've closed some deals, and I can, you can trust me. But there's also that other side of it. I think that you often see, maybe the public doesn't always see with municipal employees. And I had this perception, I have to admit, before I went to the city, a lot of complaints, a lot of frustrations, a lot of annoying things. But what I've found is the people that work at cities are the best people in the world. And some of them are bureaucrats, and they're tough too. So it's a little bit of both, but I think people really have a passion for moving the needle. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's kind of what excited me about economic development. So when I was a little girl, I didn't say, I think I'll be an economic developer when I grow up.
You didn't?
I didn't.
Oh,
no.
man.
No,
I'm so surprised.
I actually wanted to be an actress. So this is the closest I've ever come to it. And I have no skills to be an actress. So
that's so fun. It's funny
I can't sing or dance or act.
Yeah, but you have so many all these other like really sharp skills, right? We were just talking about that before we started the podcast, about your analytical, you like functional things, right? You like to learn, and the artistic side is something that you've kind of developed over time. It's not something natural. Is that what the way you were kind of describing it?
I've learned to appreciate it. I don't think I have an aptitude for creativity, which makes me a great bureaucrat. No, I'm just kidding. There is a space for creative people, and we get creative people and we get entrepreneurs that come into the city, and a lot of times they get really frustrated.
Yeah.
But I think that in understanding the entrepreneur mindset, because I did do that too. I was very risk adverse, so I was a very careful entrepreneur. But I've owned a business in San Diego. I had a cleaning and security guard business. I know it's a little strange. I was in the military. I was in a military police unit, and then it changed. And then it lent well to get the licensing required to do.
Yeah, opportunities show up, and you just take the opportunities.
And, I was just doing whatever. When I graduated from high school, I joined the military a month after I graduated, and then but prior to that, I had never left the state of Utah. I had never stayed in a hotel. I had never been on an airplane.
Whoa.
I grew up in West Valley, and my dad was a prepper, and we went hunting, and so I could shoot, and I can field dress an animal, and I have
a valuable
other
skill
skills,
set.
right? I can rough it for a while.
Yeah.
But I really wanted that. I remember getting on the airplane and flying to South Carolina and just seeing all those trees, thinking, if I get lost there, nobody's ever going to find me. And then being able to smell the walls when I got off the airplane. And, you know, but really I think it's important to travel. And I've traveled a lot, and that's part of why this feels like home to me. I've lived in a lot of different places. I've lived in Hong Kong. I've lived in Germany. I've lived in the South. I've lived in California. But Utah's always been home for me. And then Southern Utah became my home. And so while there has been a lot of growth and there are some challenges that come with that, there's also some amazing opportunities, especially when people engage. So I do appreciate what you're doing with really putting some attention on local politics, because it does matter. Yeah. And then also, I also appreciate your interview with Chad. I think he's been great for our market, and we work really closely together. And I love his attitude of an abundant mindset. We haven't always had that in this area, but I think increasingly we are, and we're just so much stronger together. And we have the ability to shape this community, keep the great things about the community, but then also take advantage of the opportunities that are coming as well.
Yeah, I think the Dixie spirit, somebody coming from outside the area and like understanding that is like, we have to work together and we have to grow, and new ideas are important in that mix as we kind of grow in.
And it doesn't always come easy here. I've lived in a lot of different cities. It doesn't always come, and I'm analytical. So I've always thought, well, why is that? And I think it has something to do with the history of the people that lived in this area and that pioneer grit. So there's two sides of that. You're geographically isolated, and it was not a very hospitable environment when
the least hospitable environment imaginable.
Right. And so the people that settled this area were tough, they put up with so much. And then we got air conditioning in the 70s, and then we
and a freeway. And a freeway.
No, but part of that pioneer, it's kind of that do-it-yourself attitude, and that we can't really rely on other people. Yeah. So I see that pop up in little places here and there. But I also see, and I think there's something kind of exciting about that and kind of Wild West about it. Yeah. But I also see the connection to northern Utah. I know we say it up north and down south, so up north. I have all the local lingo down now after being here for 20 years. But yeah, I see stronger connections, because there are so many people that this has been their playground, but it's also where they want to have a second home, or where they want to retire, or where they come down for sporting events. There's so many great things about this area that it wasn't going to stay small forever. Yeah. But I do appreciate the folks that were here when it was, 10, 20,000 people on the road to somewhere else. Exactly. And actually, that's how I found it. It's
like Radiator Springs from the movie Cars. Yeah.
So I grew up in northern Utah. I ended up in San Diego with a business, and this was about the halfway point, was about 6 hours. And I would stop here and I would think, man, this is a beautiful place to raise children. It just looks so like such a great, it's like small enough, large enough, but not
That's
too
exactly
small.
why we moved here in 2015.
Yeah, there you go.
Me and my wife
Same
was
thing.
like, it's a great place to raise a family.
Yeah.
We came from California, didn't want to live in that kind of environment. And that was exactly why we moved here,
Yeah. So I was from northern Utah, but then I got used to that San Diego weather, and I just thought, I can't go back up in the snow. I don't like the cold.
My wife was born and raised in Orange County, and she's like, I want to live in the snow. I was like, no, you don't. I promise. I lived in the snow. It's not that. It's great for a couple days, and then you're sick of it. And it snows only pretty like right after it snows, and then it's gross.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
So anyway, but once you
dig your car out a few times.
Southern Utah Southern California ruins a lot of things, and one of it is weather anywhere else in the country. Right? Yeah. You're like, oh man,
kind of spoils.
Yeah, it spoils you.
So I've been paying that sunshine tax for a while, living in this area and kind of being scrappy. But I've also, I think I've just I think, you pick it up from the people that have lived here longer.
Yeah.
And it is, it's that figure it out.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming to rescue you. You're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the case anymore, but it was for so long that it's kind of ingrained in the culture here.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out. And it actually is part of the story of Southern Utah.
Yeah.
So, it's why businesses are drawn to the area too.
That's a good point. It's a good transition too, is thinking about, okay, drawing businesses there. How do you see it differently than St. George does, right? Because Washington City, I'm saying this, not anybody else, is like the little brother, or it's like the other sibling in the county. It's like, yeah, you're going to get there one day. But they settled, they had the cotton mill. They just developed differently. How do you view it today differently, St. George's way of economic development and the way you're approaching it?
Well, St. George is a lot further ahead.
Okay.
So that was town, right? And so everybody would go to town, and that's where commerce was. Ironically, the very first business that's still standing was the cotton mill.
Yeah.
And so the early settlers that came to the area came to grow cotton, and they grew it in the cotton mill that is the Star Nursery off of Telegraph in Washington City.
Right.
So it's funny
awesome.
But it's also an agricultural cotton manufacturing that came from growing cotton in the area, right? So that's the settlers that came to this area had grown cotton in the southern United States, and that's why they were sent here. And but it's interesting that was the first business, but then all the businesses. In fact, I think the last time, it was probably 2021, 2022 that we did an analysis where about 85% of all commercial development in the county is within St. George.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, however, St. George and Washington City make up the St. George MSA. So, I mean, I play this game sometimes when I go do presentations called, is it in Washington or St. George? Because
it's a fun game.
There are so many businesses that are called the St. George this or the St. George that, which is fine. You know, the area, I still tell my family I live in St. George, and I haven't lived in St. George for 20 years.
Yeah.
I've lived in Washington City. It gets a little, those municipal boundaries do matter. They do matter when it comes to taxes, when it comes to property taxes, things like that. But we're all, we're a big community. But I've also noticed when I drive over to St. George, it has a very different feel. So I think each community has a unique character, and it's part of the history, and it's part of how they've grown.
Yeah.
So Washington City, for the last 2 decades, by permit number, has been 98% residential. So we're great at building houses in Washington City.
You're the best.
But we're also along that I-15 corridor. And we have great developable land that we're now getting to the tipping point, because part of the traffic problems in southern Utah is that Washington City leaves Washington City. The residents leave almost every day and go into town. And that was fine when it was a small farming community, but it's a lot now that we've grown so much and there's so many new residents. Population numbers, there are a lot of different sources for population numbers, but what we look at in Washington City, and especially being a tourist area, we look at it a little bit differently in that this area in general. You have residents and you have part-time residents, right? Snowbirds, but then you also have vacation rentals because we're such a tourist area. So we look at our service area, or our service population, which is about 40,000 for Washington City.
Okay.
That'll be different from our actual full-time residents, or people that are here long enough to be considered residents, right? But they may live a few months out of the year, like maybe this hot summer months they go up to somewhere
Wyoming,
cool, somewhere snowy,
right?
Exactly. But we look at that service population because that is what the city has to service with the tax revenues that they bring in, and so. Regardless of whether
real quick, what's the population? What's the primary resident population? Do you look at that at all? I can't even remember.
We do. I want to say it's. I'm gonna have to look at. That's gonna look great. Our population grows so quickly. We're around 34, 35. I want to say.
Okay.
And I always calculate the 2.7 for every home permit. So
Okay.
a single family. So there's another,
Yeah.
if you, because those figures lag behind a little bit, but the state will put out population figures based on the census data. And then that last census was a little weird because it was during COVID. But the state
estimate is 35.
Yeah,
you were
30,
super close.
35-ish. But that's probably at the end of 2024, right?
Yeah, that was 24.
Yeah. So we've had some permits since then.
A few permits. Yeah.
Yeah.
A few huge homes with some like insane, hotel size homes.
I stopped doing the parade of homes. I mean, it's great. It brings lots of people to the area, but
I don't know if I could talk about it right now.
Okay.
It's still too fresh. It's because I love Suba and I love what they do, and I know they're such a huge, valuable. They're like, I think economically, residential construction accounts for like almost 30% of our economy. Not just residential, just construction in general. I think the last time I looked was around 30% of the economy, and Suba has a big part of that. And the Parade of Homes is really cool in all of the ways, and it's starting to get kind of gross.
There are a lot of big homes where but there is also a big effort from a lot of different places to look at affordable housing or housing affordability, or I think they should call it attainability now is the
the euphemism changing around what it means and what big A, little a, all that stuff.
Can I buy a house here? Can my kids move out of my house? That's what I want to know. Right?
Affordable, attainable. It doesn't matter. Can I actually buy a house? And then there's the rent portion, right? This is a totally separate conversation. It's economic factors that are different, but buying a house has a lot of factors that we can't control.
Right. And actually, I'm going to have to give you a recommendation for, and I'm going to have to send it later because I don't remember the guy's name, but he's from Zion Public Finance. Okay. And so they're a municipal advisor. They advise the city of Washington and other cities throughout Utah. But they did a presentation recently on, they had this time, they had this measurement of what affects as far as politically on the federal level, the state level, or the local municipal level, who can address the affordable housing issue, because it's not just happening in Southern Utah. It's right. There are lots of places across the nation where there's a housing shortage.
So are you saying that this analysis is saying this individual entity, like local municipals, can do these things? And
they can do certain things through policy, but the things that are done at a local level take the longest to address the issue. The things that happen at the federal level have the fastest impact. And so he'll do a much better job of breaking that down.
That's interesting.
But especially, and I think, folks don't always know that. They just know that there's a problem. I know we have a lot of local business owners who are struggling. The city's struggling to get employees. Labor is an issue, and it's not an issue. You want skilled labor, and I think there's a lot of initiatives and training and everything. But you also have to be able to buy a home here and live here,
afford it,
right? Or rent. You have to be able to afford. So, we can draw from other communities that are a little less expensive to live in, because depending on what that wage is, and there's the Department of Workforce Services will have the dollar amount of how much per hour or what the salary is for how far people are willing to drive. So they'll drive 30 minutes for this amount, or they'll drive 15 minutes for this amount. So we can draw from other areas where, housing is a little bit more affordable, but only to a certain point.
Yeah, because we're in the middle of nowhere.
Right. We're not going to have people driving from Vegas.
And Cedar's too far. If you look at that, if that analysis, I bet you Cedar 40 minutes is probably too far. 50 minutes.
There are people that make a daily commute.
They do.
From, but it's
much more difficult. It's
been a while since I looked at it, but it was about 15,000 people a day.
Wow. I was way bigger of a number than I thought it was going to
be. That make that commute.
That's crazy.
Or maybe that's, I don't know if that's a day. I'm gonna have to check my numbers.
That's all right. Somebody else fact check us. We're giving our best. We're giving our best shot here. So
I'm a jack of all trades. Don't give.
Master of none.
Yeah, and I'll have those numbers for a business if they want to know. I'll pull the most recent data. Where to get the data, right?
So maybe let's go back to the differences between St. George and Washington City, because we weaved around. I did the weave. Okay. Just the differences, and then I really want to, while we have a little bit enough time, I want to talk about what's coming up in Washington City too. So just take me back. 98% residential community.
Right.
And so your focus is definitely we need revenue into the city because a residential property is a net cost to the government, right? The house doesn't make the city government really any money.
Right. It's a cost. So and
the
it
property
varies
taxes
depending.
don't cover for that, right? Like
No,
is that
they don't. They don't. And sales tax doesn't always cover. For every dollar of revenue that you bring in property taxes for residential, it costs about, it ranges $1, but up to $1.60. So $1.30 to $1.60. Whereas like commercial, for every dollar of revenue that comes in, it's 33 cents too. And that varies a little bit too. But in general, though, that's a concept.
you get a capture.
That
Yeah.
residential doesn't pay for itself. Now, changing up that residential changes those figures a little bit, and depending on what type of commercial really makes a difference too. If there's a high capital investment in, that means that the value of the development, whatever it is, a commercial development is higher. So Washington City has a strategy of looking for high value because we have a limited commercial area. So we want high value, we want a high dollar investment, and we want, of course, sales tax generation. And part of sales tax generation is not just to offset the tax burden on residents, that, their property taxes would inevitably have to go up, or the service goes down, which means services in police, fire, roads, all of the sewer, parks, trails, all of the things that people love the area for, those services go down. And we're kind of at that point where, the city's struggling.
Quick water drink.
Yeah. The good news is we do have some great projects coming in that I think will really not only help that ratio a little, bring more revenues in so that we can maintain the service level to the community, which I think is great. We have great parks, we have great trails, we have great employees that put a lot of effort into those.
Yeah.
The ball fields, the Sylvan soccer parks, we have some really great areas.
That's such a cool park. I love that park.
Yeah.
It runs along the river.
But also, infrastructure and the way we build out infrastructure depends on, the revenues that come in. Excuse me. And the costs are going up for everything that goes up for the government side too. But the other thing is jobs, services, and products closer to where Washington City residents live. So part of the traffic problem is that what we talked about is everybody going into town.
Yeah.
It becomes not, and there's certain roads where usually those commercial corridors because they're going to work too. They're going to school. They're going to, and people tend to buy things closer to where they work rather than where they're home, where they live. Now that's in general, our demographic's a little bit different, but in general, I think that rule
definitely
still
the case
applies.
here.
Yeah. And people want convenience. Not everybody wants a commercial development in their backyard, but that's why we plan carefully where it makes sense. It makes sense at, along I-15 corridor. But Washington City has been slow because St. George has been very aggressive, and they've had an aggressive plan, and they've done a great job. And they put their density and they put their commercial right along the municipal border. They've also had a history of annexing in land because the politics of, in our past in Washington City have been, we're not interested. And so they allowed annexations for people that wanted to develop land. They would, if they wanted to develop something that Washington City wasn't interested in, like a commercial development, they would then request for the land to be annexed into St. George, and St. George would bring the infrastructure and do it. So that's, our municipal boundaries have changed over time too.
Yeah.
So, and then Hurricane has been really aggressive with some of their things, like the Gateway Industrial Park. That's far away from their city center, and so they brought the infrastructure out to get that going.
Yeah.
And so those have been good things for the city. It's if you just follow Telegraph all the way in onto SR9, and then it's where Lighthouse Foods, the Boulevard.
Okay,
and,
that part, the Gateway. Okay,
yeah. There's a Oracle.
Oracle.
That was one of the projects that I worked on when I.
Yeah, they're huge. I
level.
couldn't believe all the stuff they sell. They sell everything. I mean, if it's a tool, they distribute it. They got a big warehouse there. They could do a lot of stuff.
There are so many businesses that people just have no idea that are here. I mean, we have, I mean, I could talk for hours about this, but I mean, we have a business that is one of two in the world who make geranium, who grow their own geranium wafers or crystals, and they do geranium is a alternative to silicone.
Okay.
And they use them on satellites, and they use them in aerospace. And so there's a company in Belgium, there's a company in St. George that does that.
Wow.
And it's called 5M Semiconductor, and they might have changed their name, but they're over.
We got to
there in
write
St.
that one
George.
down.
I could
Blake,
give you, I could give you a list of
That's
there's so
interesting.
many amazing stories about
You
businesses.
wrote that one down.
Yeah, I'll send you a list. There's so many amazing businesses if that's what you're interested in.
I think the listeners are. I think the people in the community should know about these, right? So figuring out ways to tell people, because I think there's some pride in that. I think, and then you want to feel confident that there's growth in a way that seems that there's a long future, right? Because I think a lot of people worry about jobs, and I hear a lot, we just don't have enough high-paying jobs in Washington County. And so, to your point, high value has high value to the city, but also high value to the community, right?
Right.
And unique businesses like this, I think, do bring value to the community. They're just sometimes not high employment numbers. They're not the biggest employer in the county, but
I think
the mixes
sometimes
are
you're
good.
surprised at who the highest employers are as
I did the
well.
analysis. It's all cities and IHC and city governments.
Paparazzi's up there.
For number of employees, they're up there, but like the top 10, only 3 of them, last time I checked, only 3 of them were not government like directly related.
Yeah. Well,
Like SkyWest was one that wasn't.
we have federal employees.
Yeah,
here,
so
BLM and
So then a Board of Education, like the employers being these big organizations, IHC, Board of Education, and then the city governments.
University, Dixie.
Yep,
Technical
exactly.
College,
But
yeah.
either way, to your point, there are some larger employers here.
There are, and I would say more so than other areas within, say, the 5-county area.
Mm-hmm.
We're very diversified, which has helped the Washington County weather some ups and downs, and that diversification. When you have an industry like the building industry in the 2008 crash, and that really affected us, right? Mm-hmm. But it affected us less so than, say, a smaller area that has one big industry, like a mining industry or something like that gets shut down, and then that town could die altogether. I mean, it really has a big effect, and I think we've weathered some of those, but I think that also that focus from a long time ago. I mean, there has been a real effort to carve this place out of the desert and to really, to stay here, that pioneer grit.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of that is just being smart about what you're bringing to the area and balancing everything. Mm-hmm. And I think there are some times where it gets a little off kilter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're known for tourism because that's what you can see. Mm-hmm. But I think some of these other businesses that are in the area that don't necessarily do a lot of marketing because they're sending their product out and they've got their head down doing what they do. I think those are some of the unsung heroes that help balance some of
I think so
some
too.
of that, because our great weather and this beautiful scenery is going to bring tourism. And so you're going to have tourism, but that also helps offset the residential costs because you have so many outside dollars coming into the community for that. But then the jobs are not as high as paying.
Yeah, which
retail and tourism don't always pay as much.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to try and push, right? But as an economic developer, that's kind of a big, maybe not a burden, but it's part of the job. Is like, hey, I want to try to bring businesses in that are going to pay higher wages, but sometimes we don't get those,
right?
And so we take what we can get. So tell me, how did ARA? I mean, what was going through like incentives and things like that? Because I think the ARA Southwest Logistics Center is the biggest kind of explosion that Washington City's seen in development in a while outside of housing.
It was an interesting project. So I actually arrived at Washington City right when that developer was coming in, looking at land just east of the airport that happens to be on the Washington City side, But in my previous position, a couple of things happened. One is it went through a series. I was the assistant director, but we went through a series of different directors at that county. It we weren't in county employees, but we had contributions from the cities, from the county, from private businesses. We were about 70% privately funded, actually. So we were focused primarily on manufacturing, industrial, and so all the projects fell within that. So like the Family Dollar was one, Lighthouse Foods expansion. Intergalactic was a little bit different. I worked on that a little bit. Just like I said, there are a lot of hands that go into bringing this in, and a lot of people that are involved in bringing these in. But so those were some of the types of projects were the ones that you would see in the industrial parks that we worked on primarily with that. So I'm sorry.
That's okay. So talking about ARA and how was it attractive in Washington City? Like, give me the story back.
So we went through a series of different directors, and we had a director came in that it didn't really do economic development before, but had a lot of experience that lends well to it. And there are a lot of different, finance, land development, commercial real estate, a lot of those things lend really well to being a good economic development director. So this person came in and we basically said, well, let's just go see what the rest of the state is doing. And so we met with economic developers from across the state. And one of the economic developers that we met with was in northern Utah, and they brought this project out, which was Freeport West's investment in West Valley area in northern Utah. And they said this was just, so basically we had the opportunity, this unique opportunity to have that project pre-vetted, saying, and they brought it up. We didn't ask. They brought it up, and they just that project stood out as, great developer. They do what they say they're going to do. They're well funded. It's a small team, and they deliver, and it has changed. It's been a huge boon for the city, and so. Fast forward, I come to Washington City, and I hear that name again, Freeport West. Another thing happened. I got a call out of nowhere from the state treasurer of Louisiana asking if I'd pick him up from the St. George airport. And as an economic developer, you just get calls like this. And I said, sure. It was.
I hope you Googled this guy or gal first.
Oh yeah. I mean, we checked some things, but so I go out to the airport and pick this guy up.
That's funny.
He was great, and he would mostly what he didn't like is that we have a lot of chain restaurants, and gosh, from Louisiana. It's a little bit different. So
I hear that a lot.
Where's your mom and pop places?
Yeah.
Well, there are a few. Anyway.
Yeah, it's called the houses because people make their own food here, and they invite all their neighbors and friends over, and that's where they eat.
Yeah, that's true.
We do a lot of cooking in southern Utah.
That's true.
It's a family thing. There's a reason why. Yeah, anyway.
So he was in a conference in Salt Lake and had just popped down for the day, and he wanted to talk to the economic development folks because they had he was managing an investment into a firefighters trust for the state of Louisiana that had invested in land right before the 2008 crash.
Okay.
So they bought at the top of the market.
Oh, no.
Land out west that they had no idea what it was. And so we looked at it and we said, oh, yeah, these prices, it's going to take a while. Anyway, fast forward, this developer comes to town. Our city was able to respond quickly because they had a great reputation. And because they were asking to annex into St. George, and we were kind of done with that.
Yeah. Yep.
And then also we connected them with this landowner who was looking to divest. And so they struck a deal. And so they actually came in with a smaller area, and then they bought an even larger area. So that's a significant investment. And they've got about 400 acres. So some of it's in St. George. Most of it's in Washington City. It initially started out with Washington City, but they picked up those additional land pieces, which were not contiguous.
Oh, let me get back. The Louisiana guy, he comes here because he was looking for what specifically?
So he was managing land that was held in a trust that went to a firefighter's pension. Land here.
Okay.
That was part of a
part of the pension. That makes sense. And so that land wasn't by the airport. Is that the land?
It was by the airport. So there were some pieces, and they were close to what what Freeport West had already picked up.
Okay, got it.
So that's one of those things where you just keep your ear to the ground, and you remember these people that come in.
And then timing, it's just like folding the cards like all down at the same time.
It came in, we were able to connect them, and then they make the deal, and they ended up acquiring those pieces.
That's
so that helped out the firefighters' trust in Louisiana.
Yeah.
So that's where I talk about you move the needle and you get, it makes a difference.
The butterfly effect, right? Is that it's going to resonate when you make those
and you never
loans.
You never know. These people pop up from all across the nation, and, people come to visit the area, just kind of like how people find this place.
Yeah.
And then they have these so unique backgrounds, and they add to the community, and and different talents, and that all comes together to make community. So
was it land that drew ARA? Well, maybe what was the in looking at other places across countries, like proximity to I-15 or Vegas, what was it that thought, hey, this is a good place to do this thing? And I'm still not quite sure exactly what they do.
Well, I'll let you know. And without speaking,
I know it's almost 6.
That's quick.
It goes fast.
Well, so without speaking for them, I'll say this: we are geographically located in a great space in Utah for logistics, particularly southern Utah. So we have rail that's close by. We have, and they've, in Cedar City, Chad talked about this a little bit. In Cedar City, they have a transloading facility now, and they have an underutilized rail from Union Pacific that has a lot going out, but not a lot coming in. And so the state's trying to get put efficiencies on the rail, and rail. A lot of things come in via rail. We're also about a day's drive from most of the large population centers, 1 or 2 days drive from the major population centers all along the West. And then we're less than a day's drive from the Port of Los Angeles and the what's the other, Port of Long Beach. So, and then so rail, airport, universities. Those are that's the trifecta for economic development. If you have those three, that's great. And then there are other pieces that you can add to that too. But then we have great weather. We have hardworking, industrious people.
Yep.
And we have a lot of people that want to move here. We don't have people leaving,
right.
And we have some other challenges, but, and then you also,
I was going to say water. I'll say it. It's water, everybody.
Well, so I'll tell you, Freeport West is doing logistics. Logistics doesn't use water to the extent that some other manufacturing.
I think it's the lowest. I think it's almost the lowest.
Like food manufacturing uses a lot of water.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And certain, there are certain batteries or things like that.
Yeah.
And then they have a wastewater too. So those are all things. We look at all of these different things. I also know this weird thing we're at a great neutral altitude for ice cream, which is why we had Blue Bunny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's because if you have it at a high elevation and then you ship it to a lower elevation, you're going to open the container and be disappointed because it's going to
Whoa,
shrink.
I didn't even think about that.
And then likewise, you do it at sea level and you take it to the mountains, it's going to blow up.
Yeah.
So they, that
marshmallow industry. We need to get the marshmallow industry in here. That's probably another one.
So
I'm trying to think of all the things that would make that helpful.
And those are just weird, random facts that make you really good at trivia that you learn. And I love that part of it. I love that you're constantly learning. I learned something new about an industry. Like the hospitals. Why would a hospital come here? Intermountain has such a huge presence. We have really great medical. Why are so many hospitals interested in this area?
Yeah.
There are a couple of things. We have a great payer group. So people are insured and they pay their bills. And then we have a lot of doctors who are not affiliated with Intermountain who want lab space and so they want another hospital to come to the area.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So
if you're looking for a nice cup of coffee and you're in downtown St. George, FS Coffee Co. That's where you're going to want to stop. It's right there on the corner of Tabernacle and Main Street in downtown St. George. So if you got a bicycle, ride it on down there and grab a drip coffee and tell them the 435 guys sent you. Let's rattle these off.
Okay.
WinCo. That's a big one.
So WinCo we're really excited about. It's on the north side of the freeway at the new interchange at exit 11 on Main Street.
Right by the hot spring or the springs.
The boilers.
The boilers.
Yeah. So that was an 11-acre piece. We call it the R.C. Willey piece, but that was a piece of land that the city of Washington owned for a long time. And then they decided to put that interchange there. And then we decided to put it out for RFP. And we look at it differently from a private landowner. We're not trying to get the most money out of the piece the way a private developer would.
Yeah, what's the best thing to put there?
We want to do what's best for the community. So we know that we needed a grocer on the north side. We know that Green Springs is very congested with the Costco and the Walmart and the other things there. And then we also have growing communities on the north side. We have the Brio and Green Springs and a lot and the Solente, all of those building out. So we know they need they need a grocer. And then grocers hits that high tax dollar.
Yep.
It's an employee owned company. And so, we know we wanted a grocer, and we had kind of heard, you keep your ear to the ground, that WinCo had been looking at our market. And it turns out they had been looking at our market for about 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And they couldn't find the spot that they wanted. So we put it out for RFP. We had a lot of really good proposals. We put them through a committee to rank those. And we didn't necessarily go on highest offer, although WinCo's was right up there, close to, not the highest offer, but the second highest. We did what's called a value per square foot. So we looked at the tax revenues, both in terms of property tax and sales tax revenue back to the city that helps offset that burden on the residents. And then it also brings a grocer that people that is a draw that people, it's something that people will come from outside of the area to spend money, which Washington City hasn't had. We have a lot of people going to the Costco in St. George and investing in St. George's quality of life and their parks and trails and everything that they do, which is great. But we want to capture as much of that as possible. So the WinCo is a great way to do that. So they'll be coming in. They're all approved. Yep. They'll submit their construction drawings within the next 60 days or so, and then they want to try to open towards the end of 2026.
That'd be awesome.
And they'll have 4 outbuildings with that. We don't know those businesses yet, but those will be coming through.
And those are typically going to be neighborhood services type businesses. Right?
Yeah.
Think of like Smith's.
It's a C3 zoning. So anything, those out parcels. Anything.
So maybe a restaurant, maybe like a fast casual restaurant. You might get a soda shop or a cookie store. Just kidding. I hope not. Okay.
A lot of those.
We have too many of those.
They do so well here, though.
I know. Everybody stop eating sugar. It's not good for you. It's poison. Okay. Exit 13. Auto Mall's good one. I don't think we would need to dive deep into that one.
Can I tell you some highlights on that one?
Maserati.
No. So Finley Hyundai.
McCray Hepler tried to spread that rumor right out of the gate. I was like, Maserati, come on, dude. Why are you bringing that up? He's hopeful.
He's not coming out of nowhere. There are, because it's Sitla
that's
land.
True. That's fair enough. I'm sorry, McCray. That was too much.
Well, and he's great. So, and he's gotten better. I've lectured him a little bit, and he's very receptive to it. So he's good.
Very good
I'm
at
like,
that.
hey, don't kill our deals, and let's make sure.
He's like, I can't say anything yet. He says it on all his videos.
Yeah,
he's like, I can't disclose it yet. I'm
That's
sorry.
good. I like that he's doing that, and he's helping draw attention to the area and helping market the area. So he's awesome. Great.
He's the reason I'm doing the podcast. I'm doing the podcast.
Oh.
He's doing the short. I'm doing the long. He does the short stuff. I try to like, how do we dive deeper into some of the stuff that he does? So
yeah. Okay. So so that was a Sitla deal. So it was a competitive deal for the developers with Sitla before it even comes to the city, right? And so part of their contract with Sitla is that they have invited brands. And so if you go to the siennahillsautomall.com, you can see the brands that are invited. So it has to be within those brands. So I can't tell you the brands because there are more brands that are invited than that that there's room for, but it will be within that. And then it was a little slow to start because of the way that they developed it, but I think it was smart for them. They did all the infrastructure and got pad ready sites basically. And so Finley took a little bit longer, but you'll see the next dealerships come quicker, and they've got LOIs and they're finishing up deals, and I'll let them make that announcement. That's
be cool.
Theirs to make.
So we got a bunch more coming on that one.
Yeah.
How many? 2, 3?
Greg Whitehead, who is the part of the Sienna Hills team, gave an update in January and said that they have 6. They have 6 that are
Tesla better be on that list. I hope Tesla's on that one. Just a little spot. They just need like a little tiny store. They don't even need a big lot. Okay. CPIT team initiatips.
I will tell you really quickly.
It sounds
it's like
too long.
ATM machine, right? Automatic teller machine.
Okay. It prints money for me?
No, I'm just saying that the acronym is dumb like that. People call it ATM machine.
Okay,
so it's automatic teller machine. Is technically. Technically. So CPIT is something that Washington City is doing because we've traditionally been mostly residential, to get ready for this commercial that's coming at us, and to get ready to including this huge industrial investment, the retail that's coming along I-15. So that's been an internal effort. It's called the Continual Process Improvement Team. So we have a very supportive council and mayor, and we've had a lot of Washington City is not the city it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. We have new department heads, and what we're doing is we're trying to change our processes internally to respond quickly and to address these commercial projects that are coming.
Okay.
And so we just call it continual process improvement because I don't think we're ever done. Right. And I think that's a good attitude to have. We want to be cognizant of not just what's convenient for us on this side of the counter, but whoever's on the other counter and the other side of the counter. And that just has to do with,
efficiency.
Efficiency, and then just providing good service overall. I mean, we are a service. That's what the city does. That's what that's why we have employees to provide services to the residents of Washington City.
We have like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Maybe 10. Why don't we allow residential and commercial areas? Why don't we have like commercial with housing combined?
I think that's a one size fits all. I think it makes sense for some cities. I think for Washington City, that's problematic because we have a limited commercial areas. And what we did was we did allow people. And over time, if you look at what was originally in the general plan, even just the last time it was updated of what areas would be commercial, landowners came in and said, well, I want to do a general plan amendment and change this to residential because that's what's hot right now. And so I'm going to do residential. But what happens when you get too much commercial, then it squeezes out some residential. And when you get too much residential, it squeezes out commercial. So in that way, I think we're very different from St. George, where, it's commercial on top of commercial. When you go to a place, you drive past 5 places before you get to that place, right? And commercial retailers tend to be, some of them will go first in and they'll be an anchor, and some of them are like lemmings. They want the anchor and then everybody goes. So that's why these pieces for Washington City are critical. The WinCo is an anchor. People are going to want to be around that. So that helps to get some great commercial products, services, and jobs close to where Washington City folks live so that they don't have to they can still travel into St. George, but they don't have to. They have some options, and that reduces traffic. That ultimately, reduces traffic, eases traffic in St. George and some of those areas that you can't build roads large enough, right? People always say, build more roads, build more. Well, roads take land too, and it's not the most efficient way.
I guess the reason I asked is that. And we don't have to dive too deep. There's so many things I wanted to talk to you about. We get
we're going to have a little bit of that probably in our downtown, like the mixed use.
That's what I was going to say. Is that kind of transition to this? Is the downtown? Is there a city that we could say, hey, we kind of want the downtown to look like that city? That somebody could be like, oh, okay. Do you have like kind of like a little a general?
So I think that would be part of this RFP package. So over the last 3 years, Washington City has been working on land assemblage, and then Washington City has its own assets because you have to plan for things like just like St. George is doing, where they're expanding. Where they're building a new city hall, or you have to build a new police station, or you have to do something like that, right? And look at Washington County. They were in that building for a really long time, very small building. And then they built a very large building after that. So we're trying to be, we don't want to just build buildings, but that's part of growing as a city is you have to be able to have more employees and to provide service to a growing community. So with that in mind, we have some things set aside for that, but then we also want to have that hub. We want to have that downtown. Washington City used to have a little bit of a downtown, but then Telegraph was a state road, and the state came in and made Telegraph really great for moving traffic, but not really great for downtown. In fact, they pulled out some of the businesses that had been there.
Just to make it wider.
The Nice and Grocery Store went out of business. The Burger Place, if you remember the Burger Place, I used to ride my bike with my little kids in the trailer and go down the Burger Place. There was a walnut tree walnut tree in the back that I sometimes eat some dusty walnuts. So the
downtown, is it? Yeah. So what does he want to look at?
So UDOT also decided, we needed a new interchange. And so that ended up being right at Main Street. And so now, like I said, change happens and we don't always get to direct that, but sometimes when something like that happens, you can then say, okay, well, what do we do with this now?
Yeah, it opens up options.
Right, it opens up options, and so that's what Washington City is about to embark on. We hired some consultants early on who helped us to determine which areas of land were most you want to start with a core. You don't want to, excuse me, you don't want to, develop all over the place. You want to have a plan in place and you want to start with a core. And so we did land assemblage. We picked up some pieces that we knew were problem pieces that if combined could pencil and would work better. And so we've been in a process doing that. And now we have a committee that is about to engage with, to get some help, to give some direction. And so we engaged the private sector to help shape the vision. Right. So when you say, this city, we want to be like that. I don't think any city says we want to be like them, because everybody wants to be unique, because people are invested in their community and they want to be unique. But I think you can take something from here, something from there.
I think.
Yeah. And kind of put it together. So I think that's what we're doing. So we're taking concepts. We're taking, walkable mid-block crossings, walkable, zero setback, alleyways, reduced parking, going vertical a little bit. All of these things are things that are elements of a good downtown. You want to bring in arts, you want to bring in entrepreneurs, you want to bring in businesses. You want to bring all of these elements together, but you have to do it in a way that makes sense. And I think we have really good bones in Washington City for that. Mm-hmm. And that interchange is going to also make it really convenient to access it.
Yeah.
And then that interchange also made, some of this land assemblage possible.
Yeah.
And then selling the parcel of land that the city had owned for a long time and had at a low basis to a grocer that's going to bring in great tax revenues. And then, the city also brought in, cash for that, allowed us to complete that assemblage. And so you'll see that roll out in the next little while.
It's probably pretty cool to see, like, being there as long as you have isn't quite there yet, but I can see how, like, you really start to, it takes 5-6 years just to get really your feet on the ground to move things around. And then now you got to kind of start seeing things shape what the original vision is you had when you first came in.
I knew economic development, but I didn't know it from the municipal side. And it's a little different, right? And I understand it a lot better now. And I think I appreciate it too. And I appreciate even though it can be a slow process sometimes, and that's frustrating for folks, I think it's important because we have to be careful. You get one chance sometimes. And there are definitely areas where you can point to that say, that was a mistake, or this didn't go so well.
Yeah.
And so I think
it's actually the best. It's like the easiest. That's what the peanut gallery does on Facebook. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Well, I stay away from Facebook.
That's a good idea.
It's too easy to. I don't know. I find it's a place. It's easy. It's great for some things and other things. I'll tell you this: if you're going to be a municipal employee, you better have thick skin.
Yeah.
And it's best to just probably stay away from, because stay away from Facebook, because it's easy. It's really easy to say something, but it's a lot harder. And what I really respect from residents that do this, and what I didn't do before I went. So I mean, pot, kettle. So is really engage.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate the folks that come to city council meetings, and not just when the development is in their neighborhood, that watch them and that are engaged. In fact, we have an email, let us know at washingtoncity.org.
Oh, write that down, everybody. Let us know.
Let us know at washingtoncity.org. So residents of Washington City can email at any time. Everything is tracked. It's routed to the appropriate departments, and then everything is responded to.
Nice.
So
we're gonna put it in the description too, and then if it's not in the description, comment it, and I'll make sure if I miss it. But that's a good one.
Probably the thing that your listeners, especially if they live in Washington City, but if they have investment or interest in Washington City, the other thing would be the coming soon map.
Okay.
So that's a map.
That's the link you sent me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
So that's just washingtoncity.org/ED for economic development. That will take you right to the economic development page. We have a fantastic IT team, and they have a really great search function. So I know not all municipal websites are intuitive and really easy to get around in, but our search function is great in there, and they do a lot of work to keep that up. But that's a great resource. It's a great resource if you're an investor, if you're a landowner, if you're a business looking to come to Washington City. There are several layers.
Or a resident looking to move into an area and say what's coming, like what's going there, right? In Washington City, you could just go right to the map. It's going to tell you.
This is what I tell people.
It's not on the map. It's not going to exist, probably.
Well, I tell people, I go to all the city council meetings. I go to all the planning commission meetings where all this land use is, and they make the decisions, and then I put it on the map. So it's a way you can watch them, and I encourage you to watch them. But if you want to see all the decisions displayed in a interactive way, it's there. But it's also the infrastructure if we're doing a big project and there
Road
might be a road
construction.
closure, or if we have a new interchange going in. We had a couple open. We had the one on 7, the one on I-15. So all of that, new parks that open, new trails, new trailheads, really anything that's going on at the city, I try to keep updated in a layer. And the new layer that I just added was something, because we work really close with commercial real estate brokers and agents that are interested in this area, is the for sale for lease. So that's only commercial properties, but it's land or buildings or for sale for lease in Washington City.
Oh, cool. That's really helpful.
And it links directly, rather than me get in the middle of it. It has it laid out on a map.
So do the brokers send this to you? Where do you syndicate
No,
this from?
I scrape the data.
You do? You have to go to links and NAI and this is a commercial. If you're listening to me, Neil Walters, I know you're not listening to this, Neil, but if we could find a commercial MLS, that'd be really helpful. But in Washington City, you got it. So well done.
So if you click on, it's a numbered list. So if you click on the number of, the property that you're looking at, it'll open up a left side menu. And then, sometimes I have drone video of because I know people like to walk the dirt and they like to see what it looks like and see where, so whatever information I can gather from it, I'll do that. And it will also have the listing agent's contact information so that you can contact that person, not me. Some people think I do commercial real estate or help them find land.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
I will. I'll do
shouldn't.
as much as I can, but I don't want to get in the middle of these agents and what they're doing. That's not my profession. I do deal with the municipal land. So not all of it, but if it's an economic development project, I am involved in that. And I'm happy to share information about that.
You got a dinner to go to. We could talk about so much more.
That went quick.
I really appreciate you coming on. I think this is going to be helpful for everybody.
Thank you.
In Washington City, it's going to be helpful.
I think Washington City is part of the St. George MSA, which is part of Southern Utah. And in economic development, the bigger you are, the better you are.
Yeah.
And the more assets that you can draw from. So I love that we're working together, and I love all the new people in town that are interested in this and that are working on this effort.
Yeah.
I think Chad, I loved watching his perspective, and I really appreciate you inviting him and then having me come in and kind of tell the Washington story, because we have some awesome things happening in Washington City that I think are really going to be a great service to the residents there, of which I am a resident. I live over in Sienna Hills, and I'm really excited about I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm at Seven Brothers probably at least once a week. They know my name there. But I'm just excited about a new restaurant close to home.
Yeah.
And, my daughter worked at Black Bear Restaurant up there on Exit 13.
I love that.
And so, we enjoy the parks and trails as much as everybody else. So it's nice to see a little more balance coming to Washington City, and
the next time
coming in where it's appropriate.
Next time we talk, we got to talk about Warner Valley. That's the next one.
That's a whole other thing. That's probably a whole
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So
conversation.
next time we'll talk about that. But appreciate you coming on. Have a great night. And
thank you so much.
We'll see you out there, everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.